And welcome to ButteredGaming. I'm ButterToast the Third, and today I'm going to be showing you another one of my decks here. This is actually my +1/+1 counters deck. I'm not sure if I actually did a video of this before, but this is kind of a new revision of this deck that I did. So if I did, then here's the new one. I don't know. So it's green-red, and of course we have forests and mountains. We have, let's see what we got. 11 forests. Let's see. 10 mountains. 2 Lenoa Reborns. 2 Kazandu Refuges, and a Skarrg the Rage Pits. So I'm going to talk about our Lenoa Reborns here. They enter the battlefield tapped, and you can, of course, tap them and add a forest to your mana pool. But the thing with this... Wow, that was weird. Anyway, the thing with this card is that it comes with a +1/+1 counter on it, and it has graft, so you can graft it to creatures that you put on the field. Now, as you may or may not have realized from the title, this deck does focus a lot on putting +1/+1 counters on the field, on your creatures. So this card, of course, is good for that, just because it is mana, and at the same time you can put a creature with an immediate +1/+1 counter on the field. Only one, though, so, you know, that it still works. Next, I want to talk about our Kazandu Refuges here. They also enter the battlefield tapped, and you can tap them to add either a forest or a mountain into your mana pool. And the thing with this card is when it enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. So this deck is a little bit late game. It's not too late game, kind of mid game. I don't even know what to call it, but this is good for just getting 1 life back, for kind of stalling out a little bit until you can get your creatures on the field. I mean, it's not the greatest, but hey, it's there. So we have a Skarrg the Rage Pits, and it taps to add a colorless to your mana pool. And then you can also pay a forest and a mountain, and then tap it, and you can give a creature a +1/+1 counter and trample until the end of turn, which is really nice. The +1/+1 counter helps a little bit, but the trample is good, especially for this deck, because you have a lot of +1/+1 counters on creatures, so they do get pretty large, so you can give them trample. Alright, so let's get into the body of the deck here. So on top we have our artifacts, so we'll go ahead and look at those. And I say artifacts, and I really mean artifact. Only one of them. So we have a Dragon Blood. It's a 3-drop. Put it on the field, and you can also pay 3 and tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature. So again, +1/+1 counters. I might actually want to get more of those. Not really sure as of right now. But next we have our gold cards. Let's see if I can pick them up here. There we go. Gold cards, and as you see, ooh, going a little fuzzy there. Gold cards, and that one doesn't look gold from where I was showing it, but as you can see, it's double color, so we're going to call it gold. So we started with a Destructive Revelry, which is a mountain forest drop for destroying a target artifact or enchantment, and then it deals 2 damage to its controller. So that's pretty good. Not really specific to this deck per se, but it does get rid of an artifact or enchantment. Again, artifacts and enchantments can be pretty annoying, but then it does do just a good 2 damage to your opponent. So we have our Deus of Calamity, and this is a 5-drop, either forest or mountain for any of those. And it's a 6/6 with trample, which is really nice just by itself, especially for 5 mana. But then when it deals 5 or 6 or more damage to an opponent, you can destroy a land that player controls. So again, it's really not specific to this deck other than it's green and red, but it does have trample, and if you put +1/+1 counters on it with the trample, it makes it a lot easier to deal 6 or more damage to an opponent. So again, you'll just be getting rid of their mana. So another creature we've got here is our Skarrgan Skybreaker. Wow, I can't talk today. And it is a 7-drop, 4 colorless, 2 mountain, a forest for a 3/3 with Bloodthirst 3. I know that power doesn't sound that great, but you can pay 1 to sacrifice it, and he deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. So again, get it on the battlefield with its Bloodthirst. It's a 6/6 immediately. And then you can put +1/+1 counters on it, either using, say, Lenoa Reborn, the Dragon Blood, something like that, and then sacrifice it, and he'll do a bunch of damage. So, say you have your opponent down to 10, and he's a 10/10, you can just sack him and then kill him. So, there's that. And then we've got 2 Valley Rannets, and they're a 6-drop, colorless, a mountain, and a forest for a 6/3, but that's really not why you would have this card in this deck. It's for the cycling. So it has mountain cycling and forest cycling. So you can pay 2 to discard it and then search your library for a mountain or a forest and then put it in your hand. So again, it's getting more mana for either stronger creatures or being able to put +1/+1 counters on things. So then we've got this Zhur-Taa Druid, and this is the last of our gold cards, and he's a mountain forest for a 1/1, and you can tap him to add mana to your mana pool. But the good thing about him is that whenever you tap him for mana, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So this is good for getting Bloodthirst cards in the field, for example, the Skybreaker. And then we have a couple other Bloodthirst cards in here. I think there's 2 or 3 other ones. But again, you can tap him, get mana, and then even pull out a Bloodthirst card pretty easily. Alright, so next let's go ahead and get into our green cards. There we are. So as you can see right on top, we have a Crowned Ceratok. We only have 1 in the deck. It's a 4-drop for a 4/3 with Trample, and each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it also has Trample. So that's really nice, because if you have a creature that's really big with +1/+1 counters on it, and suddenly it has Trample, so then you can just smash people. So if you have Skarrgan the Rage Pits, again, you'll be giving people Trample, but that's for everybody, the Ceratok there. Alright, so next we've got a couple Deadly Recluses, and again, this is pretty much really for early game, for a 2-drop for 1/2 reach, Death Touch. So again, you can either use it early to kind of stall out a little bit, trying to get it on the field for people not to attack it, and then if you keep it alive long enough, or you just draw it later in the game, you can put it down and then start pumping it up using +1/+1 counters. And again, it'd be pretty scary to face as a big Death Touch creature. You just kind of, just big Death Touch. It's just all you really need to know. So next we have a Ghor-Clan Savage for a 5-drop for a 2/3 with Bloodthirst 3. So again, Bloodthirst, nothing really special. Bloodthirst, and you can pump it up more. You have the Ceratok, if he has +1/+1 counters, he has Trample, etc., etc. Nothing too special. Alright, so then we've got this Krosan Tusker for a 7-drop for a 6/5, which is really nice if you can put it on the field. But then it also has Cycling for 3. So if you cycle it, you can search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and put it in your hand, and then shuffle. So if you cycle it, you get to draw a card, and then you even get to search for a land. So really, this card is, again, more for the cycling than for actually putting it on the field. But if you do get it on the field, it's pretty nice. Alright, so then we've got 2 of these Ordeal of Nyleas. And again, this is going to be for putting +1/+1 counters on things. It's a 2-drop to enchant a creature. And whenever that enchanted creature attacks, you can put a +1/+1 counter. Ooh, I'm dropping stuff. +1/+1 counter on it, and then if it has 3 or more +1/+1 counters, you sacrifice Ordeal of Nylea, and then you can search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, and then put them on the battlefield tapped. So again, good for getting both +1/+1 counters and land cards. So I'm feeling like I should get a full play set of this, but I just had 2 of them from drawing them out of packs and stuff, so I just put them in here because I figured it would be really nice in this deck. Alright, so then we've got Foil Polukranos World Eater, a 4-drop for a 5/5, and you can pay XX and a forest to give him monstrosity X, and when it becomes monstrous, it deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures your opponents control. Each of those creatures deals damage equal to its power to Polukranos. So again, +1/+1 counters from the monstrous, but you kind of need a lot of mana for that monstrosity to work very well. But again, even if it doesn't get too big off the monstrosity, you can just use like Dragon Blood or something, or Skarrgan Rage Pits. That'll only give it for the end of turn, but Lenoa Reborn, or the Lenoa Forest thing, can't even remember the name of it right now, but anyway, give it +1/+1 counters, it gets pretty big. So that's kind of why that's in there. Then we have 1 Regrowth. Again, it's not really specific to this deck, but it's a 2-drop to return target card from your graveyard to your hand, so it could be good if you have, say, a creature that died. You can just pull it back on the field, or if you have, say, later in this video, I'm going to be showing you a card that'll proliferate, so you can get one of those back. Next we have Satyr Hedonist. It's a 2-drop for a 2/1. You can pay a forest to sacrifice it, and then add use a mountain to sacrifice it, and add 3 mountains to your mana pool. So those, that just gets you a net gain of 2 mountains, really. So it's okay early, but I only have 1 in here, so we'll see. So then you've got a Terrifying Presence. It's a 2-drop to prevent all damage that would be dealt by creatures other than target creature this turn. So again, you can use it, well, not again, but you can use it to attack with one of your creatures that maybe isn't big enough quite yet to survive attacking something, but you can attack and then use it and then keep that creature to pump it up later. Again, not so specific to this deck, but hey, it's in there. So last of our green cards here is the Voyaging Satyr. We have 2 of those. I think one of them I had before, and then one of them I drew out of a pack, and then I just put it in here. So it's a 2-drop for a 1/2, and it's just for mana. Again, you just tap it to untap target land. So that's good again for getting some more mana into your mana pool for that turn. Alright, so last but not least, we have our red cards. And we're going to start out by looking at 2 Blood Ogres. It's a 3-drop for a 2/2, then it has Bloodthirst 1. So again, +1/+1 counters. But the good thing, it doesn't get that big using its Bloodthirst to 3, but the good thing about it is it has First Strike. So again, if you can pump it up using, say, one of the Ordeals, you can get a pretty big First Strike creature, which is nice. So next we've got a Conquering Manticore. It's a 6-drop for a 5/5 flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain control of target creature an opponent controls until end of turn. You can untap it, and it gains haste until end of turn. This card, however, does not have haste, so it has to sit there while you use the other card you just stole to attack. But it's okay. It doesn't seem too specific to this deck, but it's a flying 5/5, so if you can pump it up more, it's pretty decent. Next, again, we have another card that's really not super specific to this deck, but it's a Crater Hellion. It's a 6-drop for a 6/6, which isn't too bad, but then it has Echo, so at the beginning of your upkeep, if this card came under your control since the beginning of your last upkeep, you sacrifice it unless you pay the Echo cost. So you either have to sacrifice it without ever doing anything with it, or pay another 6 mana the next turn, which is okay, because if you have 6 mana the first time, you should have 6 mana the second time, but I mean, you're losing out on a turn. But when it enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to each other creature, so it is kind of a good field wipe, and then suddenly you have most likely the only card on the field. And I mean, it does hit your own cards, but it's kind of a situational card. Gorehorn Minotaurs. We have 2 of those. It's a 4-drop for a 3/3 Bloodthirst 2. So again, Bloodthirst, nothing too special, but pump it up using, say, an Ordeal or something. It gets pretty big. Alright, so we had the Ordeals of Nylea earlier. Now I've got some Ordeals of Perforus. Again, I just had these, so I put them in there. I'm thinking I should get the last one for the playset. It's a 2-drop again to enchant a creature. Whenever it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. It has 3 or more +1/+1 counters on it. Sacrifice it. So again, same thing as the Ordeal of Nylea, except for the effect when it gets sacrificed. When you sacrifice it, it deals 3 damage to target creature or player instead of finding mana. So those are pretty nice too, again, for getting +1/+1 counters. And then you can just deal 3 damage to a creature you don't like, or if there's no creatures you just don't want to waste it on, you just smack the other player in the face. I don't know. Alright, so then we've got a Skarrgan Firebird. Again, not too specific to this deck, other than it does really have Bloodthirst. So I guess it's pretty good. But it's a 6-drop for a 3/3 Bloodthirst, so it might not seem worth it to you if you can't get the Bloodthirst, but it's a flying again. But the thing about this card is if it dies, You can pay 3 mana to return it to from your graveyard to your hand, but you can only do it when the opponent was dealt damage that turn. So it's a pretty decent card. It's a Phoenix type creature, so it makes sense to bring it back out of the graveyard. Next we've got two two-headed Cerberuses, which are really nice. It's a 3-drop for a 1/2 double strike, and you're like, oh, but that's not that great. But then again, think about this deck. You just pump it up, and suddenly you've got, even with an Ordeal of Perforce or something, if you get all 3 +1/+1 counters, suddenly you have a 4/5 double strike creature, and that's not that bad for 5 mana, really. And last but not least in our deck here, we've got our Volt Charge, and this is that card that's going to proliferate for us that I talked about earlier. So you've got a 3-drop to deal 3 damage to target creature or player, which is pretty decent, I guess. It's 1 damage per mana. But then you also get to proliferate. So if you have something on the field that's got a +1/+1 counter on it, you can proliferate that counter after you use this, and suddenly you've got another card that's a little bit bigger. So if you had your two-headed Cerberus and you had 3 +1/+1 counters on it from the Ordeal, you can suddenly have a 5/6 double strike card. So it's not too bad. I'm thinking I might want to get more of those too. So anyway, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you liked it. Hope I gave you some ideas at least. Some of you may have noticed that this deck did originate from the Monsters vs. Heroes dual deck, the Monsters side of that. So there you are. Hope you liked it again. As always, you can look in the description below for a complete list of cards in this deck, or if you really wanted to, you can check out the list on MTG Fanatic, which I'll also have a link to in the description below. So, see you later. Hey, I hope you liked the video. If you did, you can click on the most recent upload section there to see a Java tutorial, or you can click on the most recent in this playlist upload to see